It's podcadzo. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Everybody, welcome back to podcadzo. Welcome back to podcadzo Studios. What a treat we have. What a treat we have for all of the. What a treat we have for all the listeners today. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that this is the most prepared we've been for an episode in a while. And not only are we prepared for this episode, but we're prepared for the next several episodes. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we are officially starting off our hip-hop block of episodes. Isn't that right, Julian?
Air horn noise here. Yes. Who better to talk about hip-hop than two white guys from Fort Collins, Colorado.
Who are in an indie rock band.
Yes.
Playing strictly guitar-based music.
Mm-hmm.
But we're hip-hop fans.
I know it doesn't look like it, but we do enjoy hip-hop.
We do enjoy hip-hop. And we're going to get more into that, how much we're into hip-hop, why we're into hip-hop, what hip-hop we're into. But we do have a very special guest joining us today.
I am also going to mention the Stein.
And I do have this is not the guest, but this is a new addition to the kind of new. I have a little Stein collection at home. Right next to my Nazi memorabilia connection. Yeah, or collection. And I just wanted to use them on the podcast, I thought it'd be a special thing. I could bring you a Stein if you wanted.
No.
Okay. That being said, let me christen that.
Oh, that was the one that got dropped, huh?
It's a little dented. So, Julian, real quick, do you want to explain what we're going to do over the next couple episodes?
I'll explain what I think we're going to do.
This is subject to change, folks.
So, as of now, the plan is we're going to do like 4 to 5 episodes that are all about hip-hop. Each one is going to be a slight deep dive, but not too deep. Not like nerdy levels of deep, just deep enough. Mm-hmm. Into a specific era of hip-hop. So for the first one today, we're pretty much just talking about the very beginning of hip-hop and then the 3 eras that kind of immediately come out of the formation of hip-hop in the early 70s. We're doing it with a guest who is someone who is a hip-hop aficionado. So I think that'll help.
Very professional.
Because again, we're two white guys from Fort Collins. And I do love hip-hop a lot. I know you do as well.
I love
we
it.
both have different, I think, kind of introductions into it and then relationships with it. But that's what makes human beings is that we're all fucking different, baby. So, yeah, it'll be fun. I think we're going to have a good time.
Okay. Well, without further ado, it looks like we got our special guest on the line. So let's invite him on, shall we?
Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have very special guests on the line. Please welcome to podcadzo Austin Luxurious, a.k.a. A-Lux, a.k.a. our old friend Austin Druce. Austin, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
What's up, friends? How's it hanging?
Good, man. So we're very happy to have you here. Thank you for participating in this episode of Podcadzo. We had just kind of been explaining.
You guys to have me back, man.
Yeah, it's been too long. I think this will be episode 24, which shame on us for waiting this long to get good old Austin Luxurious on the cast. But we were just kind of explaining what we're doing to the listeners. We were starting off a block of hip hop themed episodes. So
love it.
This first one is just kind of a general introduction into hip-hop. We're going to talk about the first era and the different eras that those have brought on, or that era's brought on, and then talk about our own kind of connections with hip-hop. But first, there's something very important to talk about. The day this episode comes out, you have a new single that you're releasing.
I do. So... You guys know Tao Leofow, don't you?
Yes, know Tao well.
Yes. Yeah. So for those that maybe don't know, another Fort Collins great. He also lives out in the Chicagoland area, as do I. And so he and I are going to be putting together a single coming out called Water. You listen to the hook and it'll make sense. That's really about it. But yeah, it's funny. I had the song on a different beat a few weeks ago, a beat that I didn't own, YouTube stuff like, hey, give me NBA Youngboy type beat. And it was fine, but it wasn't right. And so I sent the stuff over to my buddy Austin, who's actually a Reddit friend, and does a lot of my production. So he did the beat for Medicine. He did the beat for Underwater on the mixtape Cruise Ship that you guys like. So he did both of those, and then he did this beat too. So we actually hopped on Discord. I sent him the stems for the hook, was like, what can you do with these? Like the verse I'm going to change anyway. And he starts playing around, and we're just like chilling on Discord, hanging out on a Saturday morning. I got Premier League going in the background, and he just puts together this insane piano melody and brings in these really heavy drums. And the verse that Tau gave me might be like some of the best stuff I've ever heard out of him. Like he finally like is starting to come into his own as an MC, I think, because Tau originally started mostly doing beats, but like really trying to encourage him to rap and stuff more. So it's just one of those singles that it doesn't have any value. It doesn't have any meaning. It's just a fucking banger, bro. So we're like, let's go ahead and put it out on Halloween. Let's just give it a roll. And so it was really stoked you guys are having me on, do a little promotion.
Yeah. Awesome, man. We'll definitely come back to the single. It's awesome. Julie and I both listened to it and really, really enjoyed it. As you were saying, it's a ton of fun. It's a banger.
It's just fucking definitely goes hard.
So it's Euro substance. It just goes.
Yeah. We'll come back to that. But as you said, last time we talked to you was after you released your 2022 mixtape, Cruise Ship. Highly encourage all the listeners to go and check that out. Since then, you've been pretty busy. You did another album which dropped earlier this year called Done Graduated. And I guess you moved too to Chicagoland, because last time we talked to you, I think you were in Nebraska, right?
Yeah. So the last time we chatted, I was working for the University of Nebraska, living in Lincoln at that time. But December of last year, so coming up on a year ago, my wife got into graduate school out in the Chicago area. So I will say we do not live in Chicago. We live in Illinois. We live near Chicago. But we actually ended up moving out here so she could go to school. She wants to do forensic pathology, cut up dead people and stuff. And I was
Chicago's a good place to do that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
God damn.
So I had, I was fine with really going anywhere. I figured it'd be a really good place for a good change of scenery, good for like, the non-music stuff, like career-wise, like a real person. But also like I've gotten so much new scenery to write about and like so many new things to think. Cause like I work in Chicago. We live about 40 miles north between Chicago and Milwaukee in this, in a town called Gurnee. But I work for Chicago down on the south side. So twice a week I go from like way up by Wisconsin all the way to the south side of Chicago. And that's a trip, let me tell you. So when I'm doing that, I'll commute on the train and the metro rail and all that stuff. Dude, you see so much. It's insane. Like I couldn't even tell you like the amount of ridiculous things that I see. And I'm like, that's a bar. That's a bar. That's a bar. That's a bar. And I'm like, I could just make so many silly songs out of this. So coming back to it, did Done Graduated that I had another Reddit friend of mine mix and mastered the whole thing. His name is David. He goes to Georgia Tech and literally have never met him before. Same with Austin out in New York. Just great thing about the internet, right? David mixed and mastered all of Done Graduated because he was like, I'm trying to get into some new like mixing things. He was putting it out there like, I'll mix your song. So I sent him a DM. I was like, hey, do you want to work with any of these? Just kept building it out. And it was like so fun to actually have a project that someone did consistently through. and it wasn't me doing like the mixing and stuff, because as much as I have learned, I still have a lot more to learn. And David was a lot more keen on that. So like that project really felt like Cruise Ship was fun, but then the next one, Done Graduated, just felt like it was that next evolution. And it just felt really good to finish up graduate school, like in a literal sense at the same time. And kind of have that nice little coronation celebration type project. But the new one that I'm working on, Water will be featured on it, is going to be called Just Family. And I'm using basically just beats I can get from my guy Austin, or Rose Beats, who's done a few, or if Tao wants to make stuff, and then like just have features from people that I've had features before, and then keep it as like a really like a slime season type of tape. But I've got some stuff on there that almost feels like I feature on the track versus like me featuring somebody else. So that's kind of fun. There's a lot of different styles to it. It's gonna be like 15 tracks long is what I've got right now in the vault. So that'll be, or it's gonna be called Just Family, and then in parentheses, Fast and Furious Luxurious. So I'm hoping to finish that all mixed and mastered, and hopefully put that out early 2024.
Damn.
Amazing, man. So definitely makes sense what you're saying from a production standpoint, the difference between Cruise Ship and Done Graduated. But would you say, like, as a rapper, that your style has evolved a lot, or as a lyricist, that there were major changes between Cruise Ship and Done Graduated?
I think that you will notice a lot more confidence in the performances on Done Graduated, especially on DG Freestyle. Needle in the Haystack and DG Freestyle, middle of the album, where I think it like really shows the growth as an MC that I've had, and a lot more of the I'm gonna rap like I'm almost 30 years old, and not, like I'm still almost 20 years old, like when I first started really trying to put stuff together. And I just felt like I was a lot more comfortable. I was a lot more true to myself. I was a lot more, I'm going to be totally honest. Like, there's so many bullshit lines that I have, like so much of what I say, like it's just not, anybody that knows me knows like that's not really my lifestyle. It's just a caricature, but it feels a lot more authentic because the confidence is there in the delivery. And I think that the wordplay is stronger. And I think what I'm really doing now is trying to work on actual good singing techniques. So like the hook on Water uses a falsetto, which I don't do a ton of, but like really trying to challenge myself as a vocalist, because I don't have classical training. I don't know as much about like breath support and stuff as like typical people would. So like trying to actually learn that part of it too. So I can kind of diversify the portfolio a little bit.
Absolutely. So to bring it back to Water, I definitely noticed that right off the bat how, like you said, confident your performance was. And it also is like very fun and kind of, bold and boisterous. And it matches Tao's really well, or Tao matches yours. Like they're both really, really fun deliveries.
His verse is crazy, man.
Across, yeah.
Like if you have the lyrics out while it's playing, and you see the way, like not only that he can kind of combine a couple of rhymes together, but I think his wordplay, it's just like, there's not a single line in the verse that is a throwaway. I don't think, like every single one not only plays off the previous, but sets up the next, just very sequential. And I think it's excellent for a feature, just to come in and it's like, I'm going to hit this point, this point, this point. And I think like, as much as I like where I'm at on the song, I think Tao just sends it to a whole other level. Like it's not the same project without him.
Absolutely. So Tao has done production for you and beats before, but what was it like collaborating in this capacity? Were you like together most of the time, or were you doing a lot of stuff separately, like sending verses and mixes back and forth online, or what was that like?
For this one, it was like remote. So unfortunately, Tao lives in a different part of the Chicago area that's still kind of far away. So we're not like close kicking it. We've had a studio session or two just like hanging out, but this one was sending stuff back and forth. But we've got like a little group chat, him, Austin, and I, that we're constantly bouncing ideas around. And it was real, again, like I said earlier, just really cool to see Tao challenge himself more. I think that what I've noticed from him as an MC is the thing that I used to struggle with is that real good confidence in your voice. The not, I think I'm rapping. It's like, no, man, I'm actually getting on this mic and I'm murdering some shit for a while. Like, I'm going to actually own this space. And especially as, well, Tao's multiracial, but like as a Caucasian rapper, myself, that's another obstacle to overcome of just like it. Hip hop is very much rooted in Black culture. And so it's like that really fine line of like appreciating, but not appropriating. And like, I think that that's something that Tao is starting to come into, that I was starting to come into, of like, no, there's a way to sound good, quality, confident, but also not sound like a white rapper. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, I'm trying to think of like an example. Was it Tom McDonald or like somebody like that? He just kind of seems like, like he's doing too much. That's one thing that I really noticed is we're not doing too much.
Absolutely. Julian,
what is it?
You had a question?
What does it feel like to watch someone like Tao, who you encouraged to get more into rapping and kind of pushed to do it? How does it feel to watch him then turn around and lay down a bar or a verse that you feel like outshines yours in some ways on the track? That must be a good feeling.
It is because I feel like I don't feel like this. I really wish I would have had more people that would have encouraged me when I first started, and that would have really like took me under their wing to coach me. Not that I have to do that for him, but I kind of like to. And just be like, hey man, like I think you can get more out of yourself. Like I think you can do more. Whereas like I felt like I was constantly chasing some sort of approval that I didn't need, but like it would have been nice to, how like, this is a grandiose example, but like how 50 Cent had Eminem, who had Dr. Dre, or like how Lil Wayne had Birdman, and then Birdman had Young Thug, and then now Young Thug has all these other rappers. Like, just to put people on and like to help them reach their goals is, I think, just a really rewarding feeling. And I also I think that music is one of those things that I may have mentioned this the last time that we talked, was I never thought that I would be capable of like doing. I just thought that it was like a star-bellied sneak. Like you either had the star or you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really pictured myself a musical person, which is totally the wrong way of thinking. Anybody could be a musical person, like in some form or fashion. Like when you really get down to it, a lot of it's math, a lot of it's science. Like, so to see him casually making beats, to really putting the time in to produce, to now like start to really find himself as a rapper is like, man, that's awesome. Like, just keep going. Like, I just want to see him keep going, because if he puts together verses like on that project, he won't just be working with me, man.
Absolutely.
That's dope.
That's awesome, man. Well, yeah, like we said, it's an excellent single.
Appreciate y'all listening, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you sending it to us early.
Yeah,
honored to listen to it before it comes out. As we said, the day this episode comes out, the single will be out. So go over to Austin's Instagram or directly over to his SoundCloud and definitely check that out.
I like the logo or the art.
Quick disclaimer. Oh, sweet. Yeah. Austin, the producer of it, Scalloper, he actually did that too.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's really that just family type thing. I will note for listeners, if you are an Apple Music person, for whatever reason, DistroKid, Apple Music just takes forever. I have since officially extended the name to Austin Luxurious. Like, Alux is still kind of the nickname, but I feel like it's just easier and looks better on Spotify and stuff underneath when it says Austin Luxurious. So I was like, I'm just going to go with that. But it's still Alux on Apple Music. So if you're an Apple Music person, keep that in mind. It still has not verified the change. I don't know why that is, why they take so long, but keep that in mind.
I have a gripe on Apple Music to add on to that. We're a lowercase band here, and all of our songs are intended to be lowercase. Apple Music,
You guys are like
it's the only
Saturday at
streaming
your
service
place.
that does this. Yeah, and but Apple Music capitalizes all of our shit, and none of the other streaming services do that.
Bro, they do that when I try to have all caps songs, and it drives me crazy. It just looks all
Really?
awkward.
Yeah,
like
it's frustrating.
Yeah, like even all the lower, it means all this, the title or sentence case, title case, whatever it is. I'm just like, but no. But I mean, if you have a big label that is backing you, you can do whatever. But I think it's
Exactly.
it's a giant middle finger to independent artists.
It is. It's like you're not good enough to use non-standard casing for your song title.
Yeah.
Well,
I love the
anyways,
lowercase thing though. Like, do you guys listen to the band Saturdays at your place?
I'm familiar. I don't listen to them a lot, but
I haven't heard of them.
Oh, dude, they're a real fun band. But they have a song called Tarot Cards. I would start with, but they do like all their stuff all lowercase too.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, they're probably big enough to do that on Apple Music, but we'll get there one day. So as I said, everyone go listen to Water and check out Austin Luxurious's other releases. A lot of
send it to your
great
mom,
stuff
send
to
it to your
listen
friends, send it to your grandma. Keep a nursing home, turn it up, man. Like, it's just a fun vibe.
It's a fun vibe.
So as I said, this is our hip hop episode, introduction to hip hop, and a block of hip hop episodes. So we did want to ask you a little bit about hip hop in general. And I think maybe the first thing we can do is maybe just go around the room and talk about how we all got into hip hop, rap, what our entrance into it was like.
Yeah. So I think you should go first, Austin, but basically the parameters I want you to hit, because this is a very forceful podcast. It's not like
love it,
happy-go-lucky like the other one. You need to tell me how old you were when you got into hip-hop, and like what era of hip-hop you first got into, and what it was that pulled you in at first. 3-parter.
Okay. So as a kid, I don't think I actually got into the first rap song that's making sense to, like, I was kind of vibing like that. Was probably Drop It Like It's Hot by Snoop. That came out, I think I was in 4th grade. And when he and Pharrell were on it, I was just like, all right, this is a vibe. But actually, funny enough, I didn't used to be the biggest hip hop fan as a kid before I was cultured. And it wasn't really until I started to get into middle school where I was introduced to the Wu-Tang Clan and folks of that nature, a lot of the 90s hip hop. That's when it started to really click for me. When I first heard a lot of Dr. Dre's 2001, so this is probably 2008, but the album 2001 got tons of bangers on there, like Explosive, Forgot About Dre, What's the Difference? That's a great one. Still DRE is a great song. This is the original Chronic, but Nothing But a G Thing's a great one. So like a lot of that West Coast Dr. Dre-ish type stuff mixed with a little Wu-Tang. And actually, I started to get really into some like alternative rap, like Army of the Pharaohs when I was in 7th grade, and like Snow Goons and Jedi Mind Tricks and that Vinnie Paz group of New York guys. So that's really kind of where it was starting to formulate for me. And I remember on like my trek to middle school, I had a playlist that I would run through on my iPod Nano Video. You remember those?
Yeah,
things? Perfect. Yeah. And I had the first 2 songs on that playlist were Get Like Me by David Banner and what was the second one? Anyway, I know the Get Like Me was on that, and I still think that is one of the best hip hop songs of all time. Hey, you ever seen a Chevy with a butterfly door? Starting news of heaven. Okay, what was the last part of the question?
Basically just like what it was about hip hop or the rap that, whatever you want to call it, that pulled you in
Yeah.
when you first heard it. What when you actually got into it that you were just like, oh fuck, this is sick.
Yeah. I think a lot of it too is just like how it made me feel listening to it. Like not in any like particular way other than just like, wow, this is good. You know? like you have those certain
Yeah,
songs.
100%.
What's the meme from Arthur where Buddy puts on the headphones and they like start the song and then he just starts to like float away? You know what I'm talking about? They've used it. I think one time it was like the intro to Yosemite by Travis Scott. That like starts to do that, and then it's like the melody into Gunna's hook, and he's starting to like float away. So that's kind of how it was for me. And then when I had another one of those moments, actually, as you can see behind me, one Jeffrey Williams. Young Thug is my favorite artist for sure. And I used to hate him. Like when Lifestyle came out, I was in, and I think that's an episode that song should be like a whole podcast episode for you guys. And I say that because it influenced like all of hip hop that we have now. Like everything after Lifestyle is because of Lifestyle. But when that song came out, I was in college. I was a freshman, and Vine was the biggest app on socials, and it was just nothing but memes about the hook. You know what song I'm talking about? Living life like spaghetti, miss on the spaghetti. So, but I used to be like,
it's like a Young
this is
Thug.
whack. Oh man. Then when I was in after college, actually, it was like 2018, my brother-in-law, Chris, was like, oh, have you ever listened to his mixtape Barter 6? And I was like, what? He's like, listen to this. And he threw on the song Halftime for me. And I was like, oh boy. And that mixtape is still, I think, goated, like just unreal. So I had like another little like rebirth into like Atlanta trap music through that Young Thug era. And a lot of the same type of music that you see now. So like one of what back to your point, Julie, about like that crystallizing moment. I was sitting and listening to Barter 6 at home, maybe having a little cannabis, and was just having a listening party for myself. And it's legal in Illinois now. They can't get me out here. Nebraska is a different story.
They ain't got shit on you.
They got me out here. Keep the ops and 12 away. But there's a song called Never Had It. And like when I have my headphones in and I'm in an elevated state and I'm like really listening to how they use the entire stereo space and like actually listen to the whole song, you know, I'm not like listening to music. I'm listening to music. And I heard all of Young Thug's vocal performances and his wordplay and his ability to ad lib and the way that he flows on beats. I was like, what the I was like, this is just insane. And like he has this one part of the hook where he's like, the cushion and a smoke blow your lungs out. And I'm just like, that's where I'm at with the hip hop.
What year was Barter 6?
It's interesting to how it's evolved now. What
year was Barter 6?
What's that? 2015, probably.
2015. Okay.
Yeah, probably right in that era. He's got his best album, like is I don't know if Barter 6 is technically an album or a mixtape, but I consider it a mixtape. But like studio album LP, Beautiful Thugger Girls, purely because the vocal performances on that are unreal. And like Family Don't Matter was Old Town Road before Old Town Road showed up, like that country hip hop stuff. And he comes in, he's like, country Billy on a couple milli. Like then Old Town Road came out, and people were like, "Oh yeah, it's country trap." And I was like,
So you had like a rebirth moment with all that.
"Yeah, yeah." And that got me into all sorts of different kinds of music. So now, a lot of the hip hop I listen to is Young Thug still. A lot of Little Baby. I love Young Dolph. May he rest in peace. Key Glock, hilarious. Anybody that's going to be in those YSL stuff, like Gunna and all them. And then, yeah, those are kind of the hip hop ones I've been rolling around in. But when I'm not listening to that, and I know it's a hip hop episode, but still on like my real Midwestern emo divorce dad rock.
Hell yeah.
Beautiful.
I think there's a lot of parallels between the two.
Oh, it's crazy. Well, what's amazing too is with hip hop is the way that it's blended so much with pop punk. And like, I think the Juice WRLD, Trippie Redd, 24K Golden, a lot of those types of guys really ushered that in. But Juice WRLD's another one. May he rest in peace, and Chicago's finest. But
I remember Juice WRLD was like a big deal the last time we talked.
Bro, he's so talented, man. Like, it's just so sad. But and then another Chicago, unfortunately, how things have gone with his mental health and the way that he conducts his business, but I still think the music stands up, is Kanye. Like, that is very, very difficult to separate art from the artist, not caping for any of his political statements, purely from a musical perspective. Graduation and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy are just untouchable.
Absolutely.
Why the fuck
did
the balloons just happen?
Kanye had balloons programmed in Zoom whenever his name comes up.
You said graduation. I think that's what.
Oh, yeah. That's so awkward.
I'll let Julian have done that for a second.
Still good.
Yeah, he makes it hard to separate the art from the artist. I think a lot of times it's a lot easier than it is with him.
Yeah, it's like him and R. Kelly. Like, R. Kelly, it's hard because his songs are legitimately about the crimes, that he's accused of. But with Kanye, it's like talking about, choke a South Park writer with a fish dick. I'm like, that's a brilliant fucking line, bro. Why are you saying all this stuff about Jews? Just stick to the South Park writers. Quit the anti-Semitism. It's wrong, but it's also horrible for your brand, dog. Like, take the meds, please, Kanye. Like, they work. Take them. I think it was Pete Davidson who had the hat that said, like, make Kanye 2006 again.
If only. Well, before we go too far down the Kanye rabbit hole, because that could also be an entire podcast episode, or many podcast episodes, probably an entire podcast, honestly. But Julian, let's get your answer.
Okay, so I'll go quick. Basically, I feel like my intro to hip hop is kind of similar, where like I just heard a song. I think it was like a Black Eyed Peas song when I was in like 4th grade, and I just didn't really like it, so I didn't really get it. The first time I heard a rap song that I really liked, I would have to say it would probably be the song New York State of Mind by Nas. When I was in like 8th or 9th grade, because
Nas is awesome.
It kind of, I love Nas. It also just kind of like spoke to me, I feel like, in the same way where he talks and raps like so pronounced in that you can't like mince any of his words or like misunderstand any of his shit. And the beat is just like so simple and raw, but goes so hard that it just can't do anything besides like pull you in. So that would have to be it for me.
Where'd you go from there after?
Well, okay, so I don't know, man. I was kind of a dick about music for a long time.
It's hard not to be, bro.
Where like especially when you're like a teenager and you just have like a superiority complex about everything. Like, for me, if it didn't have like real instruments, I wasn't really down with it.
Yeah.
So I really liked the Roots a lot when I was in like high school, because the Roots were like kind of everything to me. They had like a lot of jazz influence and like funk influence, but they also had a lot of very like pretty serious bars on there. And I always felt like Black Thought was slightly underappreciated as a rapper. But at the same time, that kind of like superiority thing that I had going on kind of went away when I was like 16. And then I pretty much just got into like old school hip hop for like years, where I really liked like first wave like southern hip hop, like Outkast. I was always like a huge Nas fan, and I always also was like a Wu-Tang fan. I really liked East Coast hip hop a lot for like a long time, and then kind of later circled back around to like G-Funk and all that shit. And then the last like 2 years, it's been like a lot of weird underground and like emo rap and like some white boy rap too. Like I've been getting pretty into like Suicide Boys.
Yeah, you like they're
Will
really
do.
good. You like Flatbush Zombies?
I kind of like Flatbush Zombies. I will say I saw them at Red Rocks 2 years ago, and it was the worst live show I've ever fucking seen. Like they couldn't finish a song.
I refuse to do a live show anymore. Like I have so much auto tune in my music. I'm like, there's just no way. There's no way.
Have you tried doing live performances? Have you done a lot of them?
I'd love to see you perform live.
Yeah, I would as well.
Oh, bro, I actually never have. Mostly because I have no equipment for a live show, and I don't know what all that would entail in terms of like, would a venue have it? I don't have roadies. I have a mic and maybe. So, but I have considered like open mic nights or something like that. I mean, like both of you guys know me, like I'm not shy. So getting up in front of people is not so much the problem. I think the biggest thing with a live show, other than like those logistical excuses I was just making, is the fear of like the music that I make, even if it's silly, still means a lot to me. Just like the effort I put into it and like the passion I have for it, that if I'm keeping it a buck, like the fear of failure and the fear of bombing is incredibly high. So that's probably, if I'm being totally mask off, that's probably the biggest reason, is just like performance anxiety. But I also just love to mix and like just mix my vocals and that sort of stuff. Whereas if a live show, you don't really have that control.
Right. Oh, makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But Sucks at Flatbush sucked. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, me being a dick and saying things like that are why people have performance anxiety, right? But I mean, I paid like $65 for a ticket, so I expect them to finish a goddamn song.
Also, but that's the thing too. Also, like if you're the performer, like that's the risk you run. Is some people might think your shit sucks. Like that's the game is the game.
Part of the game. Yeah.
And most of the time, if I don't necessarily like the product, but I see a genuine effort being put in, then I still can get behind the artist. But with Flatbush specifically, I didn't even feel like they were putting in an effort. They were just kind of like trying it, and then it wasn't working. Then they were just like, "Well, fuck this," and then they just move on to the next song. And then they started getting like aggressive with the crowd, where they'd be like, "You guys aren't giving us enough energy, and that's why we can't perform." And then it was just like, well.
Was that the Halloween show?
Yeah, like
bro, you're on stage.
I think it was on the 30th. Yeah, like you said you were gonna do this. We didn't like force
MC,
you to do this.
Master of Ceremonies. That's the gig. Like that's how hip hop started, bro. I was in New York. People getting in parties, doing a little beat bop. Hey, you do this and you do that, and then now we got NBA YoungBoy. But you know, it originally started with people just chilling in a crowded room, just getting them to go, hey ho. So that's disappointing to hear, and I hope that they have.
I'm super glad that you mentioned that, because this is the hip hop
that
foundational
cannot be a better
episode.
segue.
Well, we gotta talk about you.
We gotta ruin that excellent segue and talk about my beginning. Sorry, Austin, were you gonna say something else?
Like I think it was also very serendipitous that I'd be the one, because my freshman year of college we had like a freshman, like a Lobo 101. You guys remember that? It's kind of like that, a freshman introductory class.
Yeah. Fuck that class.
And,
sorry, Tao. I know your dad taught that class, but
that's right. He did.
But the class that I had was Intro to Hip Hop, and I had it all year. And my professor
That's
in net,
sick.
yeah, my professor in net, I still email her about stuff. Like, she is so fucking cool, man. She is so into, like, she's a hip hop historian. So like, we legitimately went through units of like each era of hip hop and stuff. And like, that was another thing that got me more into it in college, was like the appreciation of the history. And then we all presented on different rappers and stuff. My group, actually, we presented on Kid Cudi, which another big influence in like 2009, I think, is when Day and Night came out. That was another song too. But go ahead, Colin.
I somehow missed. I'll answer the question second. I somehow missed the Kid Cudi train completely
Really?
until
Day and Night
recently.
was never a big deal for you?
No, it wasn't.
Damn.
But it was a huge deal for Julia, my girlfriend, and she remains a massive Kid Cudi fan. And so I recently went back and listened to the Kid Cudi classics.
I think that
I
song
understand
specifically is still like a big deal to a lot of people.
Oh, definitely. It had like a weird resurgence like last year. I feel like people were talking about Day and Night a lot. But anyways,
yeah, I think
how I
Cudi
got
also
into
put out
hip-hop.
like a compilation project.
Yeah, he did corresponding with that.
The one where he sang all the songs for real.
Yeah,
It's pretty good.
yeah. But how I got into hip hop. So like a lot of like young kids, like you get obsessed with certain songs just because like of the hook, or the song was novel and you're just like obsessed with songs instead of music or artists specifically. So like as a young kid, I had a lot of hip hop and rap songs that I was obsessed with, that I would listen to all the time without appreciating the context or like knowing what hip hop and rap really was. And then when I was, I don't know, middle school, so like 12, 13, I had an older friend who I looked up to a lot, who was like my music guru. He's the one who got me really into Green Day when I was a really young kid. Green Day was my first favorite band.
Shout out.
And then, yeah. And then he was a couple years older, and, you know, like a lot of kids do, entering high school or whatever, he got really, really into hip hop. And I remember the day he showed me Can I Kick It by Tribe Called Quest. And it was like the coolest thing I've ever heard. I became obsessed with that song, and I became like obsessed with learning everything I could about Tribe Called Quest. So that was the entrance for me.
R.I.P.
And then, of course,
Fife.
got into Wu-Tang. R.I.P. Fife, indeed. So yeah, I got really into Wu-Tang Clan and all the classic 90s stuff. And I really just stayed in that for like years, because there's so much to explore there. And I've actually been going back like over the years and realizing I missed like a huge part of classic hip hop and listening to that. But anyways, after I got out of the 90s phase, you know, this was like early 2010s. So I tried to catch up on all the stuff I'd missed in the recent years. And then, like Julian, I was an asshole about music in high school, and I just got really into rock, and I don't know, didn't have a lot of time to listen to hip hop, or I guess. And then, you know, you get out of that eventually. So over the last couple of years, like I said, I've been returning to like classic hip hop that I missed somehow, or just catching up with the artists over the past couple of years that I've been really enjoying. So that's my story.
What's like the newest artist that you would say you enjoy?
A big
Austin
one. Yeah, Austin. Indeed. And Austin, you mentioned Young Dolph. Young Dolph is someone I recently, or not recently, but over the past couple of years, I was, every time Young Dolph released an album, I spent a lot of time with it and got obsessed. So yeah.
Nice.
Young Dolph.
Call
I
on my
know,
big
and
booty bitch trashy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some great Young Dolph stuff. It's, I don't know, a lot of potential.
All right. So if it's chill with you, I'm going to fire off some inception of hip hop early facts. And you can just let me know how you feel about them and interject as you feel fit. And then I think there'll be like a couple questions that kind of come out of this at the end. But
Let's chop
basically,
it up.
I just wanted to start at the very beginning. It was created by African Americans in the Bronx in the early 70s. And I feel like this is important to note somewhat early because, like pretty much every other musical trend in America specifically, it was created by African Americans and then very quickly appropriated by whites, and then when used for its intended purpose by the African Americans, it was then complained about a lot by the whites. And that's kind of what we see
The whites.
in the early years of hip hop, coming from, again, a white dude from Fort Collins, Colorado. But yeah, basically, the term hip hop was created by a dude called Keith Cowboy, who was a good freestyle MC back in the day. He was actually using the term to mock the way that U.S. soldiers march, just saying like hip hop, hip hop, hip hop in a freestyle. And then he later came back to that term and tried to incorporate it into like his live freestyle act. And essentially, at around this time when people were freestyling over stuff, they were really only acting as hype men, kind of as you said earlier. The only point of MCs was to get crowds stoked about the DJ.
Right.
So DJs would play 1 or 2 tracks tops from just a collection of records that they happen to have, usually at like a public park or a skate park or an outdoor venue of some type that could fit like a large amount of people. People would just show up, a DJ would start playing like hype tracks essentially, and then an MC would show up and freestyle to keep the crowd stoked. And that's pretty much how hip hop started. I think the soul of that kind of stayed in hip hop for like most of the 70s, and it wasn't until like right before 1980 that there was more of a focus put on like production and releasing things for the radio and like
is that like the Sugar Hill Gang
and all that type of stuff. Yeah, well, so Sugar Hill Gang is often credited for like the first recorded hip hop song. And I think,
but it's probably,
I don't remember if my research proved
Flash.
otherwise, but
yeah, Grandmaster Flash always comes up as,
yeah, I think the message is like one of the
like hip hop history
hip-hop songs.
Yeah,
and he often gets credited to. I put this in one of my fun facts. He gets credited for like the freestyle flow, but oftentimes it's thought that Keith Cowboy was like the originator of like that freestyle flow, but it just wasn't recorded at that point in time. So yeah, like,
is this aligning with your studies as you understand them, Austin?
Yeah, the biggest things that we usually went to was like all of the stuff about the MC getting the DJ up, because then it was also DJ Kool Herc in that era too. He might be a little bit later though. I don't remember. I don't know if he was 70s, but yeah, that's all aligning with it. But I think what we were learning was that it was more Grandmaster Flash that got that initial credit along with Sugar Hill Gang. But it sounds like that's misinformation and that it's actually homie Cowboy.
You're right. Like, I think a lot of people credited Sugar Hill Gang specifically because they were the first ones that had like a hip hop song put on the radio, essentially like a recorded song that was released. But there's like, yeah, like a 5 or 6 year kind of gap period there between when Keith Cowboy's kind of emceeing at like block parties and then when Sugar Hill Gang is kind of releasing stuff on the radio. And at that point, like it, especially with hip hop and I mean a lot of kind of musical subgenres, a lot of the early years and formational years aren't documented or like recorded at all. So it's kind of up to whoever's interpretation, you know. And Sugar Hill Gang definitely were the first to popularize it, so that's probably why they get like a lot of the credit. But yeah, so essentially
so catchy.
That lays out it is real good. And the hip hop to the hip hop and you don't stop, that was also a line used by Keith Cowboy in a freestyle in like the mid 70s. So a lot of it was kind of like borrowed and recreated, and I think that's also something super common that you see in like all genres of music is things being like repurposed and pushed forward by new groups of people as it gets older and older.
Well,
So
that's why
basically,
the samples
we'll
are
just
so
go from
big
here
in hip
into
hop too.
totally.
Yeah, because
And
you just
they've
have people
always
spinning their old
the
records. So
genre's
it's like
always been
putting that
really
into a beat.
absolutely. They've always tried to stay true to kind of the early original idea of like the recipe of what hip hop should have been. Not overly complex, not like overly produced, not jam packed full of stuff, but the messaging behind all the songs has always been pretty much the most important part. Up until, I mean, obviously we have now like a million different subgenres of hip hop where you can go into a subgenre and find like, you know, art rap or emo shit that is barely even hip hop at all, but you know, that's the beautiful thing about the continued progression of music.
It's so wild to me whenever I think about this that the genre as we know it, as far back as we can trace it, was invented within our parents' lifetime.
Yeah.
That like our parents were born into a world without hip hop.
And a
that
lot of the
now
people that kind of like invented it are still around.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's
which is
like
crazy how much it's progressed.
And it's I argue that it's pop music now. Like I don't. I mean, I kind of stole that from I think 50 Cent who was talking about it, but basically like most popular songs are hip hop artists like Drake. I mean, he does a lot of R&B too, but like Drake's also a hip hop artist. Future's a hip hop artist. Young Thug's a hip hop artist. Like Lil Durk's a hip hop artist. All these enormous acts, and it's just pop music now. I am hard pressed to find music that is not more American than hip hop. It's like blues and hip hop right there.
Right.
Really good foreshadowing into where all this goes, I think. You're a fucking smart guy. So basically, I kind of wanted to just break down the kind of first three eras of hip hop, if you will, after like its foundational kind of establishment into our culture. So we talked about like early 1970s up to 1979, which is oftentimes referred to as the old school era, which is when it was largely just DJs and MCs hosting block parties. And then pretty much right around 1980, you see it pop onto the radio. There's a lot of sudden kind of disbursement and reaction to hip hop throughout the country, and a lot of, you know, areas throughout the US kind of latch onto it in different ways. And then kind of going through like the mid 1980s, we call it the new school era, or it is often called the new school era, which is when you start to see hip hop on the radio pretty frequently, people kind of incorporating some more production into it, sort of making more like hooks and verses and adding a little bit more of a structure. So specifically for radio play and, you know, mass appeal purposes. And then obviously people trying to push forward the flow and the lyrical content of hip hop. So I was kind of curious throughout this time in hip hop, and I mean, you can obviously go like earlier and later too, but do you feel that there's anyone or group of people that really deserve like early credit for kind of pushing forward like the idea of what rapping should be and what lyrical content should contain and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think that so a big thing with and I mentioned these two like together, like blues and hip hop, I think that they are very much two sides of the same coin. And they're very much like human. Another reason I like hip hop so much is because it's so relatable at a human level. What I mean by that is struggle. Everyone suffers. Everyone has a struggle, like it's a basic fact of. And so much of blues music and hip hop music, especially early on, is talking about that struggle. And a lot of hip hop music is still about that. And like I have a buddy and we always kind of joke that like the album that makes you famous will always be your best project. So for Post Malone, it's Stoney. Like no album will ever be better than that. Or, just whoever it may be, the song that gets you on and that you really showcase like the want for the money, the want for the fame, the trying for that to get out, like once you've made it, that life is now no longer relatable to you. And so that music is always just going to be super commercial. I think where we see a lot of that formulated is like that. There were obviously groups before this, but like with the Wu-Tang Clan, a lot of what they talk about is like stuff that they deal with in the streets of New York, or like with Nas, like again, hip hop scene, huge, like New York is that bedrock. But a lot of it has to do with the struggle. Or like if you listen to Immortal Technique, like a lot of his music is very much about human things. And so I think a lot of that early on, and then like when you see more people come in that have a lot of like substance, that kind of starts to shift in the 2000s, right? And it gets to a lot of just stuff that lacks substance. And then you have artists like a J. Cole, who is very much influenced by old school music. And he likes to be, so I think that J. Cole probably takes a lot of notes from stuff he grew up on, because he's probably 40 now. So he was around when all this stuff is still pretty new. And so the initial people that are like formulating that, and then when J. Cole is younger, probably the biggest artists for him were going to be Tupac, Notorious B.I.G., Dr. Dre, Wu-Tang Clan, and like that whole group, Tribe Called Quest, all them. So he's got a lot of those old school influences. In the 2000 aughts into the mid 2010s, when you get more of that Memphis 3-6 Mafia influence and the Atlanta trap, Lil Wayne, a lot of that stuff, it goes less from like, or I guess it's still about the struggle, but it's a different kind of struggle. It's a lot about the trap. It's a lot about that type of life. It's stuff that's not necessarily relatable to New Yorkers, but is very relatable to people in Atlanta. So I think that what I'm really, long walk for a short drink of water, is just like music and hip hop is so much about like the performer's experience, or the experience that they are describing. And I think that's why it's such like a powerful form of music, is because it's not singing, it's rapping. Like you have to have more content, you have to have more ideas to fill up. Like you don't pull out, it's not like this is not taking a shot at country. It's just an example. It's not like a country song that's a lot, it's like 8 bars chorus, 8 bars chorus, 8 bars, it's less like that, I think. But I'd say that a lot of those, Tupac, Big Small, both did that. Like Dr. Dre does that. So just talk about your struggle. You talk about the things that are going to get you there. And I think that that's something that is still super prevalent in hip hop.
Totally. I think you honestly highlighted 2 points super, super well there. The first one being, I think like there is that mass importance to really make it like a cornerstone of your lyrical content, to really discuss like the struggle and the come up and all that stuff, coming from nothing and getting somewhere because of hard work and, determination and all that shit. That was like the first really big, I think, cultural shift in hip hop, where in the 70s, it was really just about partying and, having fun. It was actually in a lot of ways about like staying clean, not doing drugs, not doing crime so that you wouldn't get arrested and stuff like that. Just living to party another day. And then when it shifted to being on the radio, it started to become a lot more about how do you document your struggles as an African American living in an everyday American world, and how do you convey that to other people so that it can be relatable and more spreadable and stuff like that. And that was the first really huge cultural shift in hip hop, where it started to like lose some of the country but really gain other parts of the country in a really big way. And then the other really important thing that I feel like you mentioned was just the fact that as the eras kind of progress through hip hop, there's always one or two people that the newer artists are like looking back on. So I feel like in rock music, pretty much we've only been like sucking off like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles for the last like 60 years, if you really think about it. But then like hip hop, every 5 years there's a new goat. There's someone else who has elevated the genre to be something completely different. So it's constantly changing.
Yeah, it's an interesting point.
Yeah. What do you have any thoughts on this? Who do you think really like scooted the genre forward, and who is influential to the new homies now?
Okay, so this might be a very basic and naive answer, but from my largely uneducated perspective, it seems like who made the biggest impact early on like scooting it forward was NWA, of like so brutally turning their experiences into hit songs that not only related to their peers, but like to rich white suburban kids all over the country. How do you feel about that?
I
Do you agree, Austin? Would you agree with that take?
Yeah, definitely. I think too, because another thing is like with NWA, they really helped make hip hop a lot more commercial. Like it's they're they have their name, which means so many things of basically anti-establishment, but their entire game is establishment. I think they were a very like pinnacle group of like, now we're into the mainstream. Like now hip hop is, and that ushers in this whole new line of rappers. And then I think the next person that really took the reins there was Eminem. And I think Eminem pushed it, and then Lil Wayne comes in, and I think those two together continually like push it all the way up to probably the early 2010s, when it starts to shift to more of the trap beat, trap drum type music that's a lot more like designer drug interested, less like
Sure.
I'm gonna kill my baby mama and throw a bottle at the like that kind of music. So
Less gangsta rap.
yeah. And again, Eminem, another great example of the struggle. Like all of Eminem's early music, when he's not doing his Slim Shady character, is all struggle. It's all about like his shit he dealt with in Detroit, and like his horrible family situation, and like Lose Yourself is a great song about imposter syndrome. Like it's all super relatable things. The biggest thing with hip hop though that I think turns people off to it is I don't think they realize the purpose of exaggeration in lyricism. Like not every country singer owns a tractor. Not every hip hop artist is a gangbanger. Like they just happen to fit the themes of the music or something like that. But I think that people like tend to get turned off because the situation isn't like literally relatable, and they don't take that extra step to think, oh,
Right.
the struggle is relatable. The fact that we have issues and adversity in life, that's relatable. The fact that we are both human and have these things that happen to us, and we're going to talk about it, and like this is a way to express yourself, that's what makes it such relatable music.
So there's an artist I've been revisiting lately that I wanted to bring up in this episode because I wondered what you thought of their historical significance, and that's the Beastie Boys.
My sister would be so
kind
happy
of
right now. My older
Beastie
sister
Boys
is the
fan?
biggest Beastie Boy fan in the world.
That's funny because my sister is too a much bigger fan than me.
Really?
But I've been I was just listening to Paul's Boutique the other day and
So good.
going back to their old stuff. And yeah, I guess when I like, I don't know, read about hip hop or whatever, Beastie Boys seem like more of a footnote rather than like someone really pushing the genre forward or like having significance to what was going on at the time, or like being influential to other artists that were contemporaries of them. So I don't know, thoughts on Beastie Boys and their historical significance.
So I'll say like a quick thing and then let you speak, but basically I just feel like Beastie Boys kind of how you said NWA kind of made hip hop commercialized, or made the idea of it it was proof of concept that it could be commercialized. I feel like Beastie Boys kind of did that too for a lot of the rap contemporaries of the same time period, where they didn't necessarily like the Beastie Boys, but they saw the Beastie Boys model and saw that it could be profitable, and then they just applied it slightly differently. I love the Beastie Boys. I think they deserve a lot of credit for like pushing hip hop forward, but not necessarily for like being like rap pioneers, but more so just for showing a different way that hip hop could kind of go in a different market that it could kind of reach, while we were still trying to like figure out as a society how commercializable that can't be a word.
Commercial potential.
How much commercial potential something like rap or hip hop had at the time. That's the word.
I think the big thing with the Beastie Boys, other than the fact that their music is just awesome, is they're a great example of what you were talking about, of whether it was an intentional homage or not. But as we were talking, I kind of realized that the Beastie Boys are probably very influenced by 70s hip hop, mostly because there wasn't a lot of hip hop before them. But also, like, even if you just think of the song Fight for Your Right, how much of that is something that you could see done at one of those block parties, you know? And one of the things that's cool about them too is, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, like, you know, we talked about the inception of hip hop, but we never really talked about how much punk rock and hip hop kind of piggybacked off of each other. So I feel like that's the perfect way to like mention that now.
Yeah.
Because Beastie Boys started off as a hardcore band.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing too, is like they're not only pushing the hip hop genre, but they're pushing the hip hop blended with other music forward. Like, they're such innovators. And even though they had kind of an ironic way of going about things, like Intergalactic is one of my all-time favorite songs, just because, one, it's a bop, two, music video is awesome, three, very fond memories of rapping along with my older sister. But you can tell from that song that they know who they are. And in the video, like, they're not trying to do too much. They're just being themselves. And they're like you were saying, Colin, like showing off a way that that you can do hip hop in a completely original fashion.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely. Well, anyways, they're just a group I've been listening to. Like I said, I wanted to make sure I got a comment in this episode.
The only other thing I really want to mention before we move on is we were talking about NWA kind of, and then Lil Wayne and Eminem being like three kind of front runners for pushing the genre forward and the commercial success of the genre. And I think another important thing to mention is just the amount of edge and like discomfort level that all three of those artists like purposely incorporated into their music to like try to make the masses purposely more uncomfortable or like challenge the status quo more, which I also think has been kind of a crucial element of hip hop that artists have like always universally taken away ever since the beginning. Okay, third era and final for today. Basically, the golden era is what it is most often referred to, but it is the time period from the mid-'80s all the way through the mid-'90s, arguably going all the way up to the year 2000. And it's called the golden era because it's when we see the biggest growth in development from a production standpoint and also a lyrical standpoint, and then just the commercial acceptance and adaptation of rap kind of to where it is now. And also, as you said earlier, probably considered the most mass-marketed, popular style of music of all time. It's kind of the gift that America has given to the world, other than like blues and soul.
It's like pop and like Taylor Swift, and like that's about all you get from American commercial music these days.
Pretty much. So yeah, I mean, in the golden era, we're talking pretty much everyone we've already mentioned, but we've also got, well, let's just see. We've got homies like...
What year did you say the golden era started?
Well, it starts arguably like the mid-1980s. There's not like a year specifically, but anywhere from like 1984.
That's an
1985
interesting-
to like 1995, 1997 ish.
Okay. 'Cause it's an interesting defining of the eras because people always refer to 90s as like old school. I feel like.
This is well, so I agree with you. I stole a lot of these notes from a hip hop timeline website where it just goes from the year 1970 pretty much all the way up to today. And golden era, if you think about timeline wise, like golden era from mid 1980s to mid 1990s, that's when you're seeing like NWA and then Dr. Dre. The whole G-Funk movement happens in that time period.
You also have like
East Coast really progresses a lot at the same time, and then you have like Southern rap kind of coming in at the very end of like the mid 90s.
Okay.
So not necessarily only in the end of the mid 90s, but really by the time the mid 90s were over, Southern rap was like the dominating style of rap at the time.
So the golden era doesn't extend into the 2000s, ends in the 90s?
It depends who you ask. I would say it ends in the year like 1997 because then you have like Jay-Z really starting to step up, and Jay-Z is what a lot of people will consider like bling rap or just like flex rap, where it starts to be a lot more about like just flexing on the homies, proving that you're like the real OG and that type of shit. And then that kind of
another huge part of hip hop is flex.
The 2000s.
Absolutely,
Totally.
especially today.
Hip hop's about the struggle. It's about the flex, and that's I can't believe I didn't think to mention that earlier. But yeah, some other like golden age. You're gonna have a lot of like De La Soul, Biz Markie, Big Daddy Kane. Who else?
How do you feel about Black Star?
Black Star. I don't know how familiar I am with their work. I'll have to do some more research.
Fair enough.
Was that Mos Def's
That's
first
yeah,
group?
that's Mos Def and Talib Kweli. And then like Ice-T, obviously, like
yeah. Ice-T, I think, is a little more 70s and early 80s, maybe like right before that one, which is so funny that he had a song called Cop Killer, and then he became what's his dick on SVU.
I was gonna bring that up. It's so wild that he became one of the most like famous mainstream people ever after making a song called Cop Killer.
So he released what is it called? Rhyme. It's a rhyming pun. It's called like Unreasonable Rhyme or something like that. But his debut LP came out in 1985. A lot of people consider that like kind of the beginning of the G-Funk movement, but we all know that Dr. Dre pretty much single-handedly invented what we all know as G-Funk, which is just that bass line, the groovy-ass shit, the catchy-ass hooks, and then honestly rapping a lot about just fucking partying and, telling everyone how fucking cool you are and how dripped out you are, which was smoking the weed, partying, drinking, driving nice cars, that type of shit. And at the same time on the East Coast, pretty much all the rap at the time was like really rapping about the struggle and focusing on the come up, and slightly less focused on the flex, but very much focused on the idea of this is everyday life for us in the boroughs of New York. And then, like I said, it pretty much ends like in the late 90s or up to the year 2000 with what people oftentimes consider like the golden era of
So are we
rap.
very much in the post golden era fallout period? Is that what this age is, or is there a name for this era of hip hop?
I honestly, so pretty much the eras after this are just named essentially on like the larger stylistic or social influence that like the music has on the time period. So like I saw a lot that like 1997 to 2007 was called like the bling era, because a lot of rappers were just rapping about, again, the flex and the come up leading to that kind of second phase of a lot of these rappers' lives, like Austin said, where they're less focused on this is my day-to-day life and more focused on, hey, I fucking made it, like I'm fucking huge now. And just being like
my life is
socially
actually a movie now.
influential. Yeah. I don't know if I did a good enough job of explaining that, but
I think it was a great
and then
explanation.
2007 to like mid 2010s is just like the rap pop era where like rap and pop kind of meld and become one. You see Lil Wayne and Kanye making like pop albums, and then you see
Trap.
like Lady Gaga making like rap albums.
Do we know the first pop artist to include a rap verse in a song? When did that start?
Dude,
Because that has
probably
been
started
our whole
for-
lives. Like if the original version of a pop song does not have a rap verse, it's immediately remixed with the rapper who adds the verse, and that becomes a #1 song.
I mean, like Coldplay added Jay-Z to some shit back in the day. Everyone was doing it.
Is it Aerosmith and Run DMC?
It could. I mean,
Yeah,
you could
I've heard
consider
them.
that it.
Yeah.
But Run DMC wouldn't have been considered pop back then, I don't think.
No, Run DMC is very much in the golden era, I think.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I'm looking up a Reddit thing of like who's like this exact conversation that we're having. And it's a lot of stuff that like I've never heard of. But yeah,
That's
some
funny.
people are saying I walked DMC and Aerosmith. Let's see.
Cool that we have someone else to do the frantic research.
It's our fact checker.
I know. It's just
Our
like
number cruncher.
I know. Some people are saying stuff with Prince, with Melly Mel back in '84. But honestly, I'm gonna come in hot with this one. Is it just the Black Eyed Peas as a group of blending those two? Like, is it just them? Like,
They could be the first
because
ones that did it like full time.
yeah. I mean, and some of the songs I remember of like a pop song with a rap verse, Smack That always comes to mind. Because I remember that Eminem verse on that Akon just, looks like another cup banger. Classic.
I mean, Outkast
Classic.
kind of did that on their own, like with Hey Ya and
True.
Spooty.
Yeah. Speakerbox Love Below. That
Delicious.
project is
So-
just, yeah.
Pretty pop driven.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think there's always been, because hip hop / rap always kind of had that influence in like jazz and soul from the beginning, that I think there might have always been like that, or not always, but pretty much since the idea of it being on the radio was accepted, that like the hook and the catchiness has always been like a very important part to the song. And pop is pretty much just all about catchy hooks and
Yeah.
Absolutely.
shit that you'll remember. So it makes
That's why
sense.
people don't
So
play Tool on the
Austin,
radio.
we're gonna.
That's just because Tool fucking sucks. Oh, I got
That's
real
a hot-
quiet after I
that's-
said that.
I was waiting for the lag. I
People
wanted to say
usually
also-
laugh after I say that, but I usually hang out with Tool fans, so
I am surprised that you have such a hot take about them.
Have
no,
mixed,
I like Tool a lot.
I have mixed feelings about Tool. I think that they make very elevated music. And I think that it's not. I don't think it's bad. I just don't think they make music for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they don't make music for really anyone besides themselves, I don't think.
Yeah.
Tool
They do what they
Boss
want to
is
do,
the
and that's
honor
the
themselves.
biggest
most
Tool
important
fan
thing.
though. It's like he is obsessed with Tool. It's so funny. You'd ask me like every other week, "Did you listen to Tool yet?"
I missed the first part of that you cut out. Who's the biggest Tool fan?
Oh, my old boss, my previous supervisor before I left my job in Nebraska. Amazing guy. It just
your old
like
boss.
his two things were talking about how much he loves Tool and like conspiracy theories about the military industrial complex. Like that. Hey, balloons again. Go me.
You just got balloons again.
Yeah, military industrial complex. getting
It's whenever
balloons.
you mention graduating or the band Tool.
So silly.
That was no accident.
Okay, so Austin,
problem,
again, we
man.
really appreciate you coming on the pod. We're gonna wrap it up soon, but I think to close it out, I want to ask of what we've talked about, is there a specific era or just a span of years that you could define as your favorite era in hip hop or rap? And then is there a favorite rapper from that era that you can pull out?
I would expand it even further than that. Just throw us a list of big dogs. I know we've already mentioned a lot, but who are the big dogs?
Um, this is just an awesome luxurious list. This is purely subjective, but going through all of those like eras and stuff, the ones that are really going to stick out to me, I just it's like Wu-Tang Clan is just such a big influential group. Like they just have so many classics, so many different styles of rap, so many different performers, so many people that were influential on the production, and it's just so grimy. And it's like it's just music that people don't make a lot anymore. Like everything is just so like pristine. There's not enough like rough. It just sounds so. What's the term I'm thinking of? Quantized. Like you see a lot of like drum production. I'm thinking it starts with a Q. It's something about but it just feels too polished. So like that's a big reason I really like Wu-Tang Clan and like Beastie Boys in that era is it's just got that extra rough edges. Notorious B.I.G. better than Tupac, not even a fucking question. Don't know why people even think it's a question. Biggie is the far better MC.
I would agree.
Not that Tupac was bad, actually quite good. And I think if their careers had gone longer and they didn't die at such a young age, that might be a different conversation. But I don't know how you listen to the 10 Crack Commandments and think that Tupac is better than him. I don't know. Anyway, also another quick Biggie aside. The dude said that a woman looks so good he'd suck her daddy's dick in the 90s, and no one did. And I stole that joke from somebody. It's not an original thought, but I heard that and I laughed my ass off because I'm like, I have always wondered that how he pulled it off in the 1990s to say that. But yeah, and then Tribe Called Quest, I love too. I think they're outstanding still. And then as you start getting into post Golden Era, like there are not two rappers more that have done more to progress hip hop, in my opinion, than Eminem and Lil Wayne. I really don't think that anybody could have done more for the brand of hip hop music than those two. And then Lil Wayne brings in Drake, who I have very mixed feelings of. Some songs I really like, some songs I really hate. But there's never been a bigger star in music, especially hip hop oriented, than Drake. The dude is just huge. And has done so much for like blending in R&B and a lot of that sing-songy, like playing between rap and singing. And so Drake, just for the gravity that he has, and then through the 2000s, 3-6 Mafia are kind of the first guys that did trap. Like if you listen to their beats and stuff, they have a lot of those like clicky hi-hats like that are constantly going little rolls. They're a lot less prominent than they are in today's mixes. That's a lot more of a popular feature, I think, but it's there. So they're very influential. And then they kind of lead into where I think is now the new mecca of music, which is South. Memphis, Atlanta, tons of Florida rappers. Like those are the big names now. So I think some of the bigger artists, I don't like him as much, but like Lil Durk gotten quite popular. And then I really like let's just pull up what I've been listening to lately.
That's a super good list so far, though.
Gucci Mane,
Early.
Migos, huge in that era. They're a little bit later. And then let's see who else. Yeah, I'd say Gucci Mane's probably really big on that list. And then Kanye, just for all of the production he did, whether it be for him, whether it be for Jay-Z, whether it be for whoever, for Jamie Foxx, like Common, it doesn't matter. Like Kanye has been such an influential part and I just don't think you can talk about hip hop and music without mentioning him, because funny as it may be, I'm a motherfucking lyrical genius, voice of a generation. I think it's true. Like, I don't know, man. Just unreal. And then yeah, nobody's got a bigger influence on hip hop today than Young Thug. Just 2014 ushering in that new trap style. So
Pretty robust and
and then I'd be
detailed
remiss
list
if I didn't
there.
mention Lil
Yes,
Dicky,
impressive.
who
That was
gave
very comprehensive.
Lil Dicky gave every nerdy boy an outlet to rap. Like, I didn't think I could ever make
Do you
hip
like
hop
the
music
show,
myself
Dave?
until I heard Lil Dicky. I was like, "There's my Messiah."
That's very interesting.
Do you like the show, Dave? Austin?
I think it's pretty good. I think the thing about him that's really interesting is like, it sucked. I wish he would put out another album, because his debut album was really good, but he just hasn't. I think part of the problem with him is he tries way too hard in his music. He won't ever freestyle. Like, it takes him like literally years to write songs. I'm like, bro, just put something down. But he really made funny rap even more popular than it had been, and made it seem more serious. So just as like that other subgenre, I think he's also should probably get more credit.
Hell yeah.
Well, coincidentally, Little Dicky is where we were going to end this episode anyways, as a important feature in the history of rap.
Yes.
So, Austin, again, you're a gentleman and a scholar, sir. It's always a delight to talk with you and hear you talk about hip-hop, because it's obviously something you know a lot about and care a lot about.
Appreciate it, guys.
So we'd love to have you back on the show in the future. And to all the listeners out there, Water has dropped today, so go listen to that immediately if you have not listened to it yet.
Yes.
Appreciate it, guys. Talk soon.
Yeah,
Hell yeah,
talk to you
dude.
soon, man.
Thank
Have
you
a
very
good night.
much. Appreciate you. Okay, so I got to mention one thing really quick.
Yeah.
He didn't talk about Nas or Outkast or Jay-Z
in
his list just now.
yes.
Which would have been the three that I would have mentioned. Not the only three, but three of the big dogs that I would have mentioned.
Absolutely.
What other big dogs do you think should be mentioned before we go? Because next time we talk, we're pretty much talking. I mean, unless you want to hijack the idea at the last fucking second and make me look like an idiot, we're pretty much just talking Golden Age next time, and then getting into the bling era. So
okay. So big dogs in the Golden Age you want me to talk about?
Yeah.
Or before that?
Big dogs in the Golden era.
De La Soul came up. Yeah, he did mention De La Soul. Never mind. I don't know. I think I noticed the omission of Lauryn Hill, Missy Elliott.
I would say probably like Ice-T a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then like LL Cool J.
We didn't talk a lot about Ice Cube as a solo artist outside of NWA.
That's true. And then like Old Dirty Bastard. And there's
true. All the
there's a
Wu-Tang
lot.
spinoffs. Yeah, there's a lot. So many big dogs. Fat Boys.
Yeah.
I don't know. Fat Boys were one I got into early on and considered.
MC Hammer.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, MC Hammer.
I guess that's probably closer to the 2000s.
Yeah. Oh, Jurassic 5. I knew there was another big group
That's a
we
good
were
one.
talking about. Yeah, J5.
I'm glad you said Lauryn Hill too, because
Yeah,
Lauryn Hill.
amazing album.
Okay, cool.
All right. Good episode. I think. I mean, I don't think we could have done that without Austin.
Yeah, he was here to set the record straight.
A lot. So I'm looking forward to talking the golden age of hip hop.
We'll do Golden Age into
Bling.
the Bling era next time.
Okay.
And so we'll talk a lot about the 90s and the 2000s, early 2000s.
Excellent. my favorite era in human history.
Pretty much
So looking
all
forward
that
to
we
it.
ever
Yeah,
talk
we
about
ever talk
anyway.
It's gonna just evolve into another Britpop discussion or argument, probably. So.
We'll have to talk about Gorillaz at least once, and that'll relate to Blur, and then
True.
yeah,
True.
so we'll get there.
Okay, everyone.
All right.
Well, tune in next week when we talk about that. And again, thanks to Austin Luxurious. Go listen to Water, and we'll see you next time.
The link
on
will be
Podcadzo.
somewhere nearby.
Yeah, probably in the description for this episode. All right. Goodbye.